the shores of beautiful Nassau, Bahamas. Welcome to Walking in Victory with Bishop Neil C. Ellis. The powerful and prophetic ministry of Bishop Neil C. Ellis is impacting the lives of believers all around the world. His bold and forthright presentation of spiritual truths and biblical principles is sure to change your life forever. Get ready to experience a fresh approach to ministry as this anointed author and pastor teaches us how to walk in victory.
Walking in victory.
So, ladies and gentlemen, my intention in today's message is to demonstrate that the story in 2 Kings 8 didn't just happen. It started way back in chapter 4, which is a reminder to us that sometimes God positions us to do something long before we have the results or the impact of it. In 2 Kings chapter 4, there is an interesting story about a Jewish woman that we don't seem to know even her name. But there are some things about this woman we do know. Number one, we know that she lived in a city called Shunem, a city just a few miles southwest of the Sea of Galilee. Number two, verse 8 makes it very clear that she was a noble or prominent woman in Shunem. Number 3, verse 14 tells us that she was married to an older man who was apparently a man of means. He owned land that produced crops and had a house large enough to host travelers. This was the original Airbnb. Number 4, verse 14 also makes us aware that she was childless. Her husband was old, and she had no son to carry on his name and become the head of the household in the event of her husband's death. As she grew older, she came to the conclusion that the likelihood of her bearing children was rather slim. Number 5, she lived in a time when many of her fellow Israelites had fallen into the trap of worshiping idols from around other nations. But she stood out as a woman of faith. In fact, she had the spiritual sensitivity to recognize that Prophet Elisha was a great man of God. And number 6, she was willing to give generously of her wealth in order to ensure that his prophetic ministry in Israel was not only well supported, but that he himself was well provided for. She had a great faith in God. She had a great faith in the God of Israel. She had an immense reverence for the man of God that God had appointed to be his spokesman in her area. This woman's story comes to us in 3 scenes. In scene 1, Acts 1 and 2, she's a giver. In scene 2, Acts 1 and 2, she is a mourner. In scene 3, Acts 1, 2, and 3, she is a receiver. Scene 1 could be found in 2 Kings 4, 8 to 17. Scene 2 could be found in 2 Kings 4, 8 to 37. And scene 3 could be found in 2 Kings 8, 1 to 6. The Lord of seed time and harvest is mentioned more than 500 times in Scripture. It's a universal law. It's a law, it's a principle that works anywhere. The Bahamas, America, it works in Asia, it works in Africa, it works in Europe. It works all through the Caribbean, anywhere. This principle works at any time, winter, spring, summer, fall. With or without a job, anytime. This law of seed time and harvest is also an irreversible law. It cannot change as long as the earth remains. That means even in tough and difficult times, there'll be seed time and harvest. It's important for you to know that this principle will always be in operation, even when the world is in chaos like now. It works during recessions. It works during depressions. It works during pandemics. It works when you're laid off. It works when you're terminated. It works when money is low. It works when you ain't sure how you gonna handle the next bill coming in. This lady in the text didn't need anything. She considered herself blessed, and while she may have expressed a great deal of contentment with her lot in life, as you examine the story closely, it is evident that this woman had harbored in her heart a secret longing to have a child of her own. As her husband grew older, it became clearer and clearer to her that this was not likely to happen. She had taken her mind off of it. But look what happened here in scene 1, act 2. She sowed into the life of the man of God. Now, how did she do that? She sowed into the man of God by expanding her house to include a room exclusively for his use during his time of ministry. Now, why did she do that? Just to sow into the life of the man of God. No ulterior motive. In scene 1, act 2, she reaped. Okay, Bishop, what did she reap? She reaped an expansion of her family. She got a son. Okay, that just sounds like something coming out of the air. Her dream came true. She had this miracle boy, but here's the point. She sowed expansion. She reaped expansion. Okay, let me see if I can help you. She said, let's add on to our house a room for the man of God. So when he's coming through our area to do ministry, he can lodge here. Right. So to facilitate the man of God, they had to have an expansion to their house. But look at God. While the woman and her husband expanded the house, God expanded the family. need you to hear this now. Everybody get in your spirit. Just get in your spirit the word expansion. Now, how did this expansion take place? As long as the earth remains, there'll be seed time and a harvest. And God has designed every seed to have supernatural multiplication power. Let me give you the B part of this. Prior to now, the woman could not have a son. She couldn't have a child. Her husband is already old. But she sowed a seed into the man of God, and the power from that seed broke into her womb. Let me tell you something. Because seeds have supernatural multiplication power, a seed could knock down a wall. Y'all. This side over here, y'all too quiet. Let me see, because there's supernatural multiplication power in a seed could cripple the power of your enemies. So I want you to hear the word of God today to you. By this time next year, you're going to see something happen that you never dreamt would happen in your life. The medical report may not look good, but God can do what medicine can't do. By this time, so next year,
you could be cancer free.
If you have been single for a long time, by this time, so next year,
you could be happily married.
Business may be slow and the future of your business may not seem encouraging, but by this time, so next year,
the business could be in the black.
As bad as things look right now, by this time next year,
you could be out of debt.
Bishop, not me. You must be don't know my finances. My response to you is, you should see my God. Take your eyes off your finances and start looking at my God, because the God I serve is able to do exceedingly, abundantly, above and beyond. Anything you can ask for, anything you can think about, and sometimes God don't even wait for you to think. He just does it. I wish I had somebody. One touch of his favor, one good break, one promotion could shift your life into overflow. Man, I was just speaking to about 49 people, and only about 7 of y'all received that. Let's go to scene 2, Act 1, 2 Kings 4:18 to 20.
And the child grew.
Now the child was born. Now the child grew. We're in a different stage of his life now. Go ahead.
Now it happened one day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said to his father, my head, my head. So he said to a servant, carry him to his mother. When he had taken and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon and then died.
As the years went on, the child grew into a teenager. It's a miracle child. And apparently, as long as his elderly father was able to manage the work of his field, his son would sometimes join him in the field. One day, while in the field, tragedy struck. Although we are not told the details of what really happened to the boy, we know that one day, the day began with him in the early hours working in the field with his father. And the day for him ended at noon when he died in the lap of his mother. I'm sure that during that time, that our only child suffered. In her arms, she prayed and pleaded with God for his life to be spared. But the child died. How could this happen? God had graciously given her and her husband this child. Why would God now take the child away so harshly and abruptly? He ain't even married yet. This woman couldn't understand how God had performed such a great miracle in giving the child to her, but would not perform a miracle and answer her prayer to save his life. Any of y'all ever been there? But here, in the midst of this tragedy, we move into scene 2. Act 2, beginning with verse 21.
And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, shut the door upon him, and went out.
Go on.
Then she called to her husband and said, please send me one of the young men and one of the donkeys, that I may run to the man of God and come back. So he said, why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And she said, it is well. Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, drive and go forward. Do not slack the pace for me unless I tell you. And so she departed and went to the man of God at Mount Carmel. So it was, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to his servant Gehazi, look, the Shunammite woman. Please run now to meet her and say to her, is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, it is well.
With the son dead, the son just died. She left the dead boy in the room she built for the man of God. He's laying on his bed. The man of God asked her, is it well with you? He could sense there's trouble. Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the boy? He could sense something is off. But the lady looked at the man of God to whom she goes for help, and she said, it is well. Let's read on, please.
Now when she came to the man of God at the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to push her away. But the man of God said, let her alone, for her soul is in deep distress.
There it is. He could tell. Keep reading.
And the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me. So she said, did I ask a son of my Lord? Did I not say, do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, get yourself ready and take my staff in your hand and be on your way. If you meet anyone, do not greet them. And if anyone greets you, do not answer him, but lay my staff on the face of the child.
She has not said to him yet, the boy died. All she asked was, did I ask for a son of my Lord? Did I say to you not to deceive me? She ain't said he's dead. But now the Elisha the prophet has discerned that there's trouble with the boy. Listen, let me just say this parenthetically. This is really a bad time in the history of the universe to be a child of God connected to an undiscerning pastor. You better be very careful in this season of your life that you are not connected to a man of God because of history, tradition, or something in the earth realm. You better be sure that this man of God or this woman of God has a discerning spirit and is able to hear from God. I just wanted to throw that in there. Let's go to verse 30.
And the mother of the child said, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, I will not leave you. So he arose and followed her. Now Gehazi went on ahead of them and laid the staff on the face of the child, but there was neither voice nor hearing. Therefore he went back to meet him and told him, saying, the child has not awakened. When Elisha came into the house, there was the child lying dead on the bed. He went in, therefore, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. And he went up and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, and his hands on his hands. And he stretched himself out on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. He returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him. Then the child sneezed 7 times, and the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, call this Shunammite woman. So he called her. And when she had came in, he said, pick up your son. So she went in,
2,
fell on his feet,
3,
bowed to the ground,
4,
picked up her son,
and 5.
and went out.
All right, now before I go there, just flick back up to verse 35 for 1 minute, please.
He returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him.
Very good. Now flick up to verse 34 for a minute.
And he went up and lay on the child, and put his mouth on his mouth.
Very good. Now drop back to verse 33 for a minute.
He went in, therefore, shut the door behind the two of them, and prayed to the
Get
Lord.
this, ladies and gentlemen. This was not in my text, but I just saw it. Get this. He went in the room. He prayed to the Lord. Before he did anything, what did he do? He prayed to the Lord. Let's go back to verse 34. Read, please.
And he went up and lay on the child.
Obviously now, he's doing something unconventional, but before he did it, he prayed to the Lord, which means what he's doing after the prayer is how the Lord answered the prayer. These are the instructions the Lord gave him to do. Okay, so he went up to lay on the child, put his mouth on his mouth, his eyes on his eyes, his hands on his hands, and he stretched himself out on the child, and the flesh of the child became warm. Verse 35, go ahead, please.
He returned and walked back.
So the child ain't up yet, he's just warm. That's an indication of life, but he ain't breathing yet. So Elijah in verse 35 returned and walked back and forth in the house. And again, that's what I want to give you. Again, he did what? Went up and stretched. He repeated the instructions he followed in verse 34. Now, what's the point, Bishop Ellis? While Pastor Delton was reading this, something was downloaded in my spirit to tell you one more time. Do it one more time. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time. Watch this now. And he returned and walked back and forth in the house, and again went up and stretched himself out on him. Then, see, this didn't happen the first time. It happened on the second round. And some of you I'm talking to, God gave you some instructions and you quit after the first time because you didn't see the results. But the God of heaven has asked me to tell you, try him one more time. Let's go to scene 3. Act 1, 2 Kings, chapter 8, beginning at verse 1.
Then Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, arise and go, you and your household, and stay wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine. And furthermore, it will come upon the land for 7 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chapter opens with Elisha speaking to this woman who we've not heard anything else from or about since chapter 4. As far as many theologians were concerned, this story should have ended at chapter 4. Chapter 5, nothing. Chapter 6, nothing. Chapter 7, nothing. Chapter 8, here comes the woman again. Are y'all listening to me? And now the woman's seed sown in chapter 4 is still at work. Watch this now. Because now in chapter 8, a famine, a 7-year famine is approaching. But because this woman sowed into his life, Elisha went looking for the woman to warn her and her household to get out of town before the famine hits. Can I tell somebody that a seed you sowed some years ago is coming to bring you warning? Sometimes your seed keeps you from danger. Lord have mercy, y'all wouldn't let me loose the preachers. What affects some people does not affect you because you have a seed in the ground.
This word has been embraced over the years, but how many of you understand what it truly means? Better yet, how many of you understand how to pray? The answer has been provided through what we know as the Lord's Prayer. Bishop Neil Ellis has broken down this model for prayer in his new book series, The Pattern of Prayer. Book 1, Our Father, hallowed be thy name. Book 2, Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Book 3, Give us and forgive us. Book 4, Lead us and deliver us. And Book 5, The kingdom, the power, the glory are now all available in paperback, hardback, and Kindle at www.neilellisministries.com, amazon.com, and locally at 100% Bookstore and Logos Bookstore.
Bishop Neil C. Ellis and the Mount Tabor Church family in Nassau, Bahamas wish to thank you for viewing the Walking in Victory broadcast and invite you to tune in next week to experience this powerful prophetic ministry. Should you wish to correspond with Bishop Ellis, please write him at P.O. Box N9705, Nassau, Bahamas, or email him at info@neilellisministries.com.
Walking in victory.